and then recessed. So I'll ask everyone to please stand for the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Okay, thanks everyone. So I'm going to hand things over to our clerk, Shelley, for the roll call of councillors.
Deputy Warden Sean Sampson.
Present.
Councillor Michael Digdon.
Present.
Councillor Melanie Sampson.
Present.
Warden Amanda Mumberket.
Present.
Councillor Brent Sampson.
Present.
Thank you, Shelley. Just noting that Troy is joining us virtually this evening, so thank you for pinch hitting on his behalf. Next item on the agenda then is, are there any items to add to the agenda? Councillor Digdon?
I'm not sure if any of these are working. I don't have a green light either. Oh, it flicked green when I pressed it.
Just having some technical.
There, mine's functioning now, so try it now.
There we go. Madam Warden, I would just like to add a discussion for review of the CCBF funding for the Pitagonal Harbor Authority.
Okay, so Councillor Digdon, we did make a decision on that already. So if we add it this evening, we would be looking at rescinding a motion. And we did approve $10,000 for those folks. So I think before we go down the road of a full rescinding of the motion, I'm wondering if we could maybe check back in with Norman, back in with staff to decide how we want it to come forward. I don't want to see them end up with no grant funding, you know what I mean? And we are going into an election cycle here. So would you be okay with us maybe referring this back to staff and checking in with Norman to see if they would be okay with having that motion rescinded before we add this to the agenda? Just where procedurally, whereas it's already been discussed and decided on, that would be about our only option, I think, at this point.
Yeah, that'll work if we can.
We'll make a commitment to do that. And, okay, thank you. Thank you for raising it, certainly. All right, so are there any other items added to the agenda? And if not, could I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion. I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Warden. And of course, at our last final meeting, there would be some technical issues, but that's okay. Go ahead, Counselor.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Counselor Sampson has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. And I think before we go any further, I would like to make sure that everyone's mic is working. And if not, we will take a brief recess to see if we can remedy the issue. So I'm just going to ask councillors to go around the table and press their buttons to make sure they're working. Okay, so
Green blinking light, but it came on before.
Okay.
Oh, there. Now it's functioning.
All right.
Try you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe they just needed to warm up. All right. Okay.
Maybe the camera was stuck, madam.
Yeah, that could have been it. That could have been it. All right. Thank you, Troy. All right, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the regular council minutes of June 24th, 2024, if there are no errors or omissions.
So there is an issue with the minutes. The question period at the end of the minutes, it said Robert Cotton approached council. It was Richard Cotton.
It was Richard Cotton.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other changes to the minutes required?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion on the minutes of June 24th? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, the next item is the special meeting minutes from August 7th, 2024. If there are no errors or omissions, could I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Any further discussion on the special meeting minutes? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is question period. This question period at this stage in the agenda is restricted to the committee items on the agenda. And I'll open that for a maximum of 10 minutes. And if folks are at home wanting to call in, the phone number is 902-226-9885. That's 902-226-9885. And if also, of course, any members from the gallery, if they have questions, we'll just give that a moment to percolate. Okay, so I'm hearing no telephones and no questions from the gallery at this stage, so we'll move on to committee reports. And I'm going to hand things over to Deputy Warden Sean Sampson for our Committee of the Whole report, which is a lengthy one. So over to you, Deputy Warden.
Thanks, Madam Warden. So Committee of the Whole report for September 2024. The committee met on September 9th of 2024. The committee discussed a grant request from Lisa DeWolf for the Type 3 Recreation Sponsorship Grant Funds for Instructor Facilitator Development in the amount of $447.50. I move that Council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to approve the grant request from Lisa DeWolf for the Type 3 Recreation Sponsorship Grant Funds for Instructor Facilitator Development in the amount of $447.50 to be allocated from the Regional Fund.
Can I have a seconder on that motion, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the request from the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner for Nova Scotia to proclaim September 23rd to 29th as Right to Know Week in the County of Richmond. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to proclaim September 23rd to 29th, 2024 as Right to Know Week in the County of Richmond.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Is there any further discussion on that item? Maybe I'll just note that we have a couple of proclamations on the agenda this evening, and I think just to ensure that the business moves along smoothly, I'll read those at the end of our meeting in full, just so that they are on the record, but we won't interrupt the flow of the committee report. Folks okay with that? Okay, great. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed a request from the Senior Take Action Coalition to proclaim October 1st, 2024 as Seniors for Climate Day in the County of Richmond. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to proclaim October 1st, 2024 as Seniors for Climate Day in the County of Richmond.
Can I have a seconder on that, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed a request from Amy Wag for English Gaelic boundary signage in the County of Richmond. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to have staff collaborate with the Minister of Gaelic Affairs and the Minister of Public Works to install the new signs as requested when the budget permits.
I'll second that.
In terms of discussion on that motion, just to be clear, it's when the provincial budget permits. I did want to just clarify that. We did discuss that, and I know that was intended in the motion. So, all right. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, Madam Warden, I declared a conflict last time, so just...
Oh, okay. Yeah. So. Okay. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the request to write off taxes for property AAN 02913135 owned by Donald Frost, which was destroyed by fire. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to write off the taxes for property AAN 02913135 owned by Donald Frost, which was completely destroyed by fire, in the amount of $205.87, which represents the taxes on the dwelling only from December 16th of 2023 to March 31st of 2024.
Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that item? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed a request to write off taxes for property AAN 041260068 owned by James White, which was destroyed by fire. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to write off taxes for property AAN 041260068 owned by James White, which was completely destroyed by fire, in the amount of $61.85, which represents the taxes on the dwelling only from December 24th, 2023 to March 31st of 2024.
Could I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, councillors. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the request to write off taxes for property AAN 06373917 owned by Colton Gillis and Keisha Morrison, which was destroyed by fire. I move that council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to write off the taxes for property AAN 063-73917, owned by Colton Gillis and Keisha Morrison, which was completely destroyed by fire, in the amount of $463.04, which represents the taxes on the dwelling only from October 31st of 2023 to March 31st, 2024.
Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillors. Any further discussion on that item? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the grant request from the Seniors Take Action Coalition for the Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Funds in the amount of $9,400. I move that Council accept the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole to approve the Seniors Take Action Coalition grant request for the Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Funds in the amount of $6,400 to be allocated as follows: $480 from each district fund and $4,000 from the regional fund, and further move that staff explore options for in-kind contributions, such as photocopying and others as deemed appropriate and within the municipality of the County of Richmond policy.
Could I have a seconder on that, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Any further discussion on that item? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
This concludes the Committee of the Whole report for the month of September 2024, and I move its adoption.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Councillor.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on the Committee of the Whole report? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you, folks. Thanks, Deputy Warden, for reading that. The next item on the agenda is the Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee, and I'm going to hand things over to that committee chair, Councillor Brent Sampson, for an update.
Planning Advisory Heritage Committee Report, July 2024. The committee met on July 16th, 2024. The committee discussed the amendments to the West Richmond Land Use Bylaw. I move that the Planning Advisory/Heritage Committee recommend to Council to accept the amendment of the West Richmond Land Use Bylaw in Part 2, Administration, as presented with the noted change to Item 15D, adding receiving notice of refusal by email when possible.
Could I have a seconder on that item?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion is carried.
The committee discussed the amendments to the Central Richmond Land Use Bylaw. I move that the Planning Advisory/Heritage Committee recommend to Council to accept the amendment of the Central Richmond Land Use Bylaw in Part 4, Interpretation, as presented with the exception of change to Item 3D to include receiving notice of refusal by email when possible.
Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, councillors. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the amendments to the St. Peter's Land Use Bylaw. I move that the Planning Advisory/Heritage Committee recommend to Council to accept the amendment of the St. Peter's Land Use Bylaw in Part 2, Administration, as presented with the exception of Item 13D, adding receiving notice of refusal by email when possible.
Can I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Finish my sentence.
The committee discussed the amendments to the Isle Madame land use bylaw. I move that the Planning Advisory / Heritage Committee recommend to Council to accept the amendment of the Isle Madame land use bylaw in Part 2, Administration, as presented with the noted change to item 13D, adding receiving notice of refusal by email when possible.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder on that motion, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the amendments to the Municipality of the County of Richmond land use bylaw. I move that the Planning Advisory / Heritage Committee recommend to Council to accept the amendment of the Municipality of the County of Richmond land use bylaw in Section 4.9 variances as presented with the exception of 4.9.3D, adding in receiving notice of refusal by email when possible.
For me, Madam Warden, it's not seconding the motion, but and not a change of heart when it comes to this vote. But we've gotten some information after that initial meeting that I feel PAC should not recommend anything to council until we have a further discussion and make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure that we inform and protect all our landowners, right? So
you're not seconding the motion?
No, sorry, just discussion. Oh, sorry. Oh,
That's okay. No, that's all right. We'll just press the pause button on that, and we'll need a seconder on the motion, and we'll move to discussion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor. So I won't make you repeat all that.
no, but yeah,
Your point is taken.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Was there anything specific you wanted to outline? Or you want, your opinion is we need to refer it back?
Yes, please. Yeah. So sorry, I jumped the gun there. So,
No, it's all good, all good. All right, any other discussion?
I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, like, specifically, what do we want to look at again? I'm not opposed to sending it back. I think it is important to have a second glance. But maybe you could just elaborate, because we've talked about it several times, so.
Yeah, no, just yeah, no, just for me, when it comes to the registered mail thing versus, the 14 days, and we moved that to 21. To me, I think, if we leave nothing to chance, when it comes to registered mail, someone's got to sign for that stuff, right, and all this stuff. So, to me, I'd just like to see us take all precautions and take all steps to make sure that we're covering all avenues for all the landowners and property owners, right? Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on that item? Councillor?
Yeah, I guess like Councillor Sampson said, or Deputy Warden said, one thing we like to do around the table is make sure we get it right. If not the first time, at least make sure we get it right. So yeah, I would be inclined to agree to send it back and for another view.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item? Councillors? No? Okay. So all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? All right. So we have 2 nays and 3 ayes. So the ayes have it, and the motion is carried. Thank you, folks.
The committee discussed a bylaw to amend the Richmond County subdivision bylaw for the municipality of the County of Richmond. I move that the Planning Advisory / Heritage Committee recommend to Council to accept the amendments to the Richmond County subdivision bylaw for the municipality of Richmond County as presented.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We have 1 nay and 4 ayes, I think. Was that correct, Councillor? You vote aye on that? Yep, okay. So the motion is carried. All right.
This concludes the Planning Advisory / Heritage Committee report for the month of July 2024, and I move its adoption.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please?
Sorry, I was lit up there, but you go ahead.
Okay. Councillor Digdon has seconded the motion. Any further discussion on Planning Advisory and Heritage Committee report? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Okay, so thank you very much, Councillor Brent Sampson. And we're going to move on to our Bylaw and Policy Committee report. And for this one, I will hand things over to Councillor Melanie Sampson.
Thanks. This is the Bylaw Policy Committee report for September 9th, 2024. The committee met on September 9th, 2024. The committee discussed the Fences Arbitration Committee terms of reference. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to approve the Fences Arbitration Committee terms of reference as presented.
A seconder, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillors. Any further discussion on the Fences Arbitration Committee? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the Municipal Emergency Management Advisory Committee terms of reference. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to approve the MEMAC terms of reference as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried.
The committee discussed the Audit Committee terms of reference. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to approve the Audit Committee terms of reference as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried.
The committee discussed the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee terms of reference. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to approve the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee terms of reference as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillors. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried.
The committee discussed the Bylaw Policy Committee terms of reference. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to approve the Bylaw Policy Committee terms of reference as presented.
Seconder, please.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, councillor. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the RCMP Advisory Board Committee terms of reference. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to approve the RCMP Advisory Board terms of reference as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillors. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion is carried.
The committee discussed the committee matrix, Appendix A of the committee policy. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to approve the committee matrix, Appendix A, of the committee policy as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
This concludes the Bylaw Policy Committee report for September 9th, 2024, and I move its adoption.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Any further discussion on the Bylaw and Policy Committee report? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Sampson. Much appreciated. We next on the agenda have the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So we're going to hand things back over to Deputy Warden John Sampson to run through the Accessibility Advisory Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So the Accessibility Advisory Committee report for the month of April 2024. The committee met on September 5th, 2024. The committee discussed changing the name of the Accessibility Committee to align with the provincial mandate to include diversity, equity, and inclusion. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Accessibility Advisory Committee and change the name of the Accessibility Advisory Committee to the IDEA, which stands for Inclusive, Diverse, Equitable, Accessible Committee, to align with the provincial mandate to include diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I'll second that.
Motion. Any further discussion?
So I just think that in the title of the report, it says for the month of April 2024, so that should say September 2024.
We'll make that adjustment.
Otherwise, yeah.
When we approve the report. Thank you. Yes. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried.
This concludes the Accessibility Advisory Committee report for the month of September 2024. Not April, September 2024.
With that correction.
Yeah, and I move its adoption.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. Thank you very much, Deputy Warden, and great to see that work happening at that committee. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Fire Protection Services Committee, and I will hand things over to Councillor Mike Digdon to run us through that one.
Fire Protection Services Committee report, August 6th, 2024. The committee last met on June 26th, 2024. The committee follow up on the mapping for ESC and VFDs. I move that FPSC recommend to Council to support the investigation and procurement of mapping using a third party aside from EDPC to produce current mapping for emergency management and the VFDs.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion on that item? Councillor?
My question is just in terms of, are we investigating procurement of mapping? So just the way it's worded, I'm just unsure. So if it's investigating what procurement of a third party to do it, I would certainly support that idea. But the way it word sounds to me is that they would investigate it and then they would procure the service. And so my concern, of course, with that is that we're in a current bid budget year and we don't have funds set aside for that. So I just wonder what the intent was, and then maybe if we could, and I don't know what our ability is to tweak a motion within a report, but
I think council has the prerogative to pass any kind of motion. We could, we could vote on this one or propose a friendly amendment to it. I think either way. But Councillor Brent Sampson, did you?
Yeah, I know this has been discussed several times in the past, and I think there's frustration probably from both sides. Some members of that group have asked for this from EDPC for probably in the range of a few years now, and it seems to not been able to get done, and I'm not sure if maybe a formal request from council to ask EDPC what could be done here. I'm all for looking into procuring a third party, and then we could discuss based on the cost at that point whether or not we wanted to move forward. I think my bigger concern is that we, pay for services through EDPC, and this is something I think that would be expected and a reasonable, like a reasonable thing for the departments to ask for. And, I understand there may be delay of months, but years seems unreasonable in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor, and I don't know if our CAO might want to chime in here, but we did, EDPC obviously has been in discussion with the CAO about it, and in fact, this is not part of the core services that they offer, that we pay for through EDPC, through the shared services agreement with the other municipalities. So it's outside of what the scope of work is that they provide to us. I think they have in the past, when requests have come in, they've tried to accommodate them, but there's simply, they're citing workload issues that they just are not able to process the requests at this time. CAO, would you like to add anything?
Excuse me, my throat's a little sore. You're spot on, Warden. It is outside the core. I did bring this up at our regional AMANS meeting last Friday as well, and other municipalities are feeling this pain point as well, so we are going to look at options as a region as well for these. The difficult part is the data and creating the ArcGIS shape files needs to happen in EDPC. We can get another printer in Sydney or somewhere else on the island to print it. It's getting the actual data on the maps that requires the time. So we're going to bring this back to John and have a conversation with him to see if we have that capacity within EDPC to at least get that done, and then take the printing somewhere else possibly to see if that would help, just so we can find a solution, because we're not alone. The other municipalities are feeling this as well.
Okay, thank you, CAO. And I would agree it's a critical safety issue. We need to help the departments get this work done as soon as possible. But I do take your point, Councillor, about it does, the motion specifically says investigate and procure, not investigate the procurement. So, yeah, it's a fine point.
Yes, certainly. I certainly wouldn't want to table the motion, because I think that it does, to Councillor Sampson's point, give some importance, which it deserves, to this motion, right? So I think if Councillor Digdon, if you could just comment, was the intent of the committee that they would investigate the procurement of mapping, or that they would actually procure mapping?
Right, exactly, yes.
Yeah, I believe the action from the I guess the fire chiefs that were there was to, if we could not get something from EDPC, was then to look beyond EDPC, for council to help look beyond EDPC. So it wasn't really, to adopt a procurement policy as much as it was to just maybe venture out.
Okay, so it sounds like
Investigate the.
Sorry, so it was investigate the procurement.
Correct.
So if we could make that friendly amendment to the motion, would folks be okay with that? And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting who made it and who, you made it, and then you seconded it? I thought you seconded it, Brent. Yeah. Okay, so
So I make that friendly amendment.
okay, and Councillor, you're in agreement? Okay, we want to proceed with the work and, recognizing it's critically important, but, okay. So that's the amendment. So could any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion is carried. Back to you.
The committee follow up on provincial road reopening maintenance. I move that the FPSC recommend to council to draft a letter to the province to have all provincial roads reopened and maintained as a secondary means of travel for emergencies, evacuations, and with the increase in MVCs and rerouting of traffic.
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillors. And for clarification, MVCs refers to motor vehicle collisions, correct? Just want to make sure that we're, okay, we're all on the same page. Is there any further discussion on that item? Okay. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? That motion is carried. Back to you.
The committee follow up on subdivision planning with EDPC. I move that the FPSC recommend to council to have the planning of new areas have 2-lane roadways with turning areas suitable for fire apparatus and provisions for water supply planning.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on this item?
My worry would be just the provisions for water supply planning is a little bit vague in the sense that I think that could be interpreted multiple ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so specifically emergency.
Water supply. So I'm assuming they're referring to either hydrants or dry hydrants or whatever the case may be, not for, potable water. Correct? Is that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I just mean, I'm not sure what constitutes the provision. You know what I mean? Like what,
Yeah.
I guess, if we're just looking at options to get something back as the options that could be viable, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So, Madam Warden, if I may, so part of the discussion was the fear of, I guess, people building or somebody putting in a new subdivision and then having no water supply nearby, whether it be a lake, an ocean, a river. So one of the things that they were hoping for was to, if you're putting a subdivision in where there is municipal water, would be to have a hydrant, I guess, hooked up. One would be, and if there was not municipal water, then to have either wells or some sort of provision in place.
So I think the wording of this motion is extremely, it's a bit of, it's really clear. It's to have the planning include these things. I think what we've done in the past is we've asked staff to look into it before we've said, yes, go ahead and do it. We could make a friendly amendment to this one to say, to have staff investigate the planning of new areas, to have 2-lane roadways suitable for turning and provisions for emergency water supply planning. Would that be acceptable? Okay. Okay. Okay, so any further discussion on that? We'll pass that with that friendly amendment. Mover and seconder is okay with it. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Sorry, you did? No. Oh, sorry, Deputy Warden, you did. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So we voted aye. Any of those opposed? Okay, so that motion is carried. Back to you.
The committee follow up on previous decisions to remove West Bay Road Volunteer Fire Department from meetings. I move that the FPSC recommend to council to reverse the decision to remove West Bay Road Volunteer Fire Department from the committee as they cover a portion of the county.
I don't think.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion on this item?
I seconded it because I had questions. So my question was, I struggle to find where we removed them from the committee. So I just need help on that to remind myself whether the committee made that decision or whether that was a decision of council. So I apologize that I didn't do my homework.
I believe there was when the updated terms of reference were done, which I assume were approved at council level. That's when that change was made.
So maybe you also remember, was that, because typically when we make changes to the Fire Services Committee, it's usually at their request, like these requests. And was that also something that came from the committee? Because I feel like it did. Because I guess the reason I'm asking all of the questions is, for example, the Port Hawkesbury Fire Department also covers part of our county, and they are not part of our Fire Services Committee. And it looks a little different, but ultimately it's the same thing.
I'm not sure if we had a report at that time. I can't recall offhand. I'm not sure if Councillor Digdon does. I wouldn't be able to say with any certainty. But I take your point as well that Port Hawkesbury was never necessarily involved, mostly because of in that case especially, the way the contract is structured. We're not really dealing with them. They deal with their own thing. It's sort of a fee for service type of arrangement.
Yes, so I guess, again, I can't say with 100% certainty, but I believe the census around the table was, at that time, it didn't matter to the other fire departments, more or less, for the reasoning of that the West Bay Road was not situated in Richmond County. Therefore, and I believe that's why we made the recommendation at council, was because they weren't situated in Richmond County, therefore, and it is a committee of council, which is a committee of Richmond County, not a committee of, Victoria, Inverness, anywhere else, so, or the town of Port Hawkesbury. So, again, that's just the,
And so my understanding is that the arrangement with the West Bay Road Fire Department comes through the Lewisdale Department, right? And they have a consistent area rate, et cetera, et cetera. That's, Councillor?
So that's been the ongoing back and forth, but at this point, West Bay Road has their own amount. It's different than Lewisdale. So I think that's been determined as separate. Okay. I think, yeah.
All right. Well, councillors, I guess we'll need to vote on this. So does anybody have any additional comments that they would like to make?
Just to be polite as possible, I think a lot of the reason as well was we were trying to make the committee more productive, and it was far less productive with the representative from West Bay Road monopolizing a lot of the time at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay.
My final comment, I guess, would be that a few times around this table, we've made comments about making changes to fire services and how an individual doesn't represent the whole. And in this case, they've come back to us from their committee. I'm sure they've followed their committee processes. They had quorum. They did a vote. They're asking us to reinstate them. So for me, whatever I think doesn't really matter. The committee kind of has spoken, in my opinion. So that would be my opinion to vote in favor of it.
Thank you, Councillor. And certainly this report this evening certainly indicates that there's been some productive discussion at the Fire Services Committee. So I want to thank the volunteers for their work on that. Sorry, Troy has his hand up. Okay, go ahead, CAO.
I was just going to add to your discussion as well. And even though the station itself is outside Richmond proper, a number of the officers, members, and volunteers are Richmond residents.
Okay, that's a great point as well. Thank you, Troy. Any further discussion on this item? Councillor Digdon?
There we go. Madam Warden, I think, yeah, I kind of follow both Councillor Sampson's arguments are at the other end of the table. You know, so again, it is a committee of council. However, we do reach out to them to make the recommendations and changes that they feel necessary. I would caution us as council moving forward, if we do accept this recommendation, to make it very clear to the committee that should it get out of hand. I don't know how we do that, but again, we don't want to step backwards. I guess moving forward, the committee has been moving very well. And to Councillor Sampson's argument earlier, you know, it seemed that one person dominated the floor all the time. So I think we just want to make it clear that we don't want that to.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Digdon, and I think, you know, having the terms of reference in place, and, you know, we've done a lot of work on that side too, so, you know, I think that helps all committees, frankly, so. Is there any further discussion on this item? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. All right, back to you, Councillor, to conclude the report.
This concludes the report for the Fire Protection Services Committee, August 6th, 2024, and I move its adoption.
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillors. Is there any further discussion on the Fire Protection Services Committee report? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion is carried. All right, thank you very much, Councillor Digdon. It's been a busy couple of months. So the next item on the agenda is item for straight area. Sorry, what's that? Oh, yes, perfect. Is item for straight area transit, the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws. Apologies, what? Did I miss one? No, yeah, there's no RCMP report for this one. Yeah. Okay, so Straight Area Transit Society included updated bylaws recently, or approved updated bylaws recently, and they've been included in your package. Through a special resolution, which is also attached in the package, the SAT board basically updated them to better reflect current practices and made sure that the updates were vetted by legal counsel and kind of align with a cooperative, the cooperative structure. And I want to thank Troy and I think Noah for getting back to us on the feedback. One thing I wanted to bring to your attention was Section 8 regarding membership. So every cooperative needs to have members, and then from these members, they elect the board. So this new wording that we're suggesting, where all current elected officials from the municipalities of Richmond, Inverness, and the town shall be members during the time that they are in office, basically reflects the current practice that we do have, where our councils we select members, two members from our council to sit on the board of directors for Straight Area Transit. So it also brings us into compliance with cooperative requirements for us to be electing those directors from a membership of elected councillors. So I've been advised at this point that it would be best to have each municipality pass a resolution as soon as possible to support the change, just to make sure that SAT's bylaws are fully endorsed by all of the councils. And they've suggested wording that the motion would be that council approve the amended bylaws of the Straight Area Transit Cooperative Limited as presented. But I'm happy to answer any questions on that. These changes have been about a year in the making for Straight Area Transit, and I realize I'm bringing them to you here, and you've had about a week to absorb them. So does anybody have any questions on that? No? Okay. All right, so if someone could please make a motion that council approve the amended bylaws of the Straight Area Transit Cooperative Limited as presented.
I'll make the motion to amend the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws of Straight Area Transit Cooperative as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Right, that motion is carried. Thanks, folks, and we'll let our partners know at Straight Area Transit about that. The next item on the agenda is the receipt of donations policy. So essentially this was brought to my attention by a member of the public, Dr. Teresa McNeil from the Johnstown area. And essentially her suggestion was that Richmond County should potentially be taking a look at this type of policy to help support projects like the one that they are working on for their trail, which we recently committed some funding. And essentially, it would enable the project to have donors who would receive an income tax receipt, as opposed to a nonprofit that's not a charity. They're unable to provide those kinds of things. So I did check in with both. You'll see both, I think, Kings and East Hants policies in the package. I did ask some folks in Kings County in particular, how effective it has been as a fundraising tool, and they suggested to me that it really hasn't been effective necessarily as a major project fundraising tool, but could be useful for smaller projects. And it's really the reason they have the policy in place is because it really established expectations for would-be donors and gave them some discretion when a donor was aiming to apply various restrictions for either in-kind or cash donations. So it was really effective at establishing the acceptable parameters for receiving those donations. But wasn't necessarily targeting major fundraising projects, which I think is not what Dr. McNeil was suggesting either. So my commitment to her was to bring it forward to council. We don't have anything on the books like this right now, which, I think leaves us a bit open. But at the end of the day, would be wondering if council would be in favor of referring this to bylaw and policy for some further investigation and discussion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. The motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda. Thank you, folks. The next item on the agenda is Councillor Brent Sampson regarding the Nova Scotia Chiefs of Police Association and Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance Conference. It's a mouthful. Over to you.
So I'll be quick. It was just a few notes from the joint conference between the Nova Scotia Police Chiefs and the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance. It was focused on models of policing. This was from September 11th to 13th. We had an update that morning from the Department of Justice. The policing review should be received from Deloitte this fall, and eventually we'll be able to see that and see what the thoughts are on that. They've been conducting a large review of policing throughout the province to see where to go. Some interesting presentations. There was a gentleman there from the Sûreté de Québec with the tiered policing model that they focus on there, as well as the chief of police for the Surrey, British Columbia municipal police force there that has had a bit of a rough go in getting established based on changes of governance and so on. He did a Zoom presentation where they've moved over from the RCMP covering that area to a municipal police force. It's not entirely finished yet, but just talking about the transition period and how that was possible to move forward, as well as the chief of police from Grand Prairie, Alberta, which spoke of some of the same stuff. On top of that, the last thing I wanted to mention was there was a group there from Nova Scotia Health to do with crisis intervention teams. They currently have been operating in the northern zone. This is through NS Health. They will train some police officers on these crisis intervention methods they provide. It's especially in places where the police are often waiting with people on mental health calls at the hospital for hours on end. This has reduced that considerably. They've had great success with it, and they're looking to be expanding it soon throughout the province into other zones, and then they'll provide training throughout the other zones. And so far in the Pictou County area where they've been running this program, from the people doing the presentation, it's been a great success, and it works better because there's, the police aren't wasting their time with people that don't necessarily need the police dealing with them. They're trying to find a better way to deal with some of these calls, and it's nice to see a positive outcome on that.
Thank you for sharing that, Councillor Sampson. Yeah, it certainly sounds like an interesting discussion. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Sampson on that? Okay. And thank you for attending as well. It's great to have that connection. All right, the next item on the agenda is a motion to rescind. So this is regarding the Joint Council Meeting Action Item 192. Obviously, scheduling conflicts and some other matters have prevented both councils from coordinating a suitable meeting time. And, I think additionally, the transition to a new council upcoming after the election will require a reevaluation of intercouncil initiatives. So we're seeking a motion now to rescind the motion passed on November 4th, 2023 and May 27th, 2024 regarding the direction given to staff to organize, coordinate, and proceed in scheduling a meeting with the Town of Port Hawkesbury Council and Richmond County Council. Could I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. It's all about whose light goes on first, right? All right, so any further discussion on that item? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the first reading regarding the amendments to the West Richmond, Central Richmond, St. Peters, Almadam, and the Municipality of County of Richmond Land Use Bylaw. So we look for a motion to give first reading approval to those bylaws, and furthermore that staff schedule a public hearing. Can I have a motion to give first reading approval?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. I think we would also need a motion to give first reading approval for the amendment to the Richmond County subdivision bylaw, and furthermore move that staff schedule of public hearing.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, councillors. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, that motion is carried. So the next item on the agenda is correspondence. So there was nothing under action required, and there were several items under for information purposes, including the Richmond Reflections Fall 2024 issue, which looks fantastic. So I want to send a congratulations out to the team who put that together. There's a lot going on, and I hope everyone takes advantage of some of the activities. The Seniors Take Action Coalition annual report is in there as well. Congratulations to those folks for putting together such a great summary of all of the things that they've been up to, largely driven by dedicated volunteers. And last but not least, the Community Development and Recreation Survey Notice to Residents for the IDEA strategy. So any questions on any of those items? Okay, next item on the agenda then is unfinished business. The Paroisse Saint-Joseph grant request for the Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Funds in the amount of $10,000. And I have a note here that it's for information, but I think the update is that, I don't know, maybe his CIO, I'll hand things over to you. I see your hand up. You go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, we're just continuing with our grant specialist to work with the folks, and we've also sent it away to CCBF for pre-screening for eligibility.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, CAO Troy McCulloch, for the update on that. So we'll see that return to unfinished business on a future council agenda. The next item is the review of action items. Were there any questions on the action item list? Okay, so we didn't have any items added to the agenda, but we did have some motions from in camera that I probably should have taken care of at the top of the meeting. So I'll take care of those now. We did have an in camera meeting to discuss contract negotiations, and from the discussion, I think we'd be looking for a motion to approve the request for Willie's Taxi to operate in Richmond County.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor. All those in favor? Or is there any further discussion? I'll ask first. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. And I think the second motion that we had was to refer the taxi bylaw to policy and bylaw for updating.
I'll make that motion as well.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Is there any further discussion on the referral? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, so before we begin our question period as well, I'm going to just read through the proclamations that we passed this evening. So if you'll bear with me, we'll start with Right to Know Week from September 23rd to September 29th, 2024. So we're celebrating that right now. Whereas the Municipality of the County of Richmond has adopted the principles of openness, transparency, and accountability, and whereas the Municipal Government Act gives citizens a right of access to information in the custody or under control of the Municipality of the County of Richmond, and whereas access to information ensures citizens of Nova Scotia have the opportunity for meaningful participation in the democratic process, and whereas a celebration of the right of citizens to access information will facilitate informed public participation in policy formulation, ensure fairness in government decision-making, and permit the airing and reconciliation of divergent views, and whereas the Municipality of the County of Richmond joins all other Canadian jurisdictions and democracies worldwide in acknowledging International Right to Know Week, therefore be it resolved that I, Warden Amanda Mumbercat, on behalf of the Municipality of the County of Richmond Council, do hereby proclaim September 23rd to September 29th, 2024 to be Right to Know Week in the County of Richmond. So thank you, folks, for your support on that proclamation. The second proclamation we passed this evening was the Seniors for Climate Day. So whereas October 1st is Canada's National Seniors Day and the UN International Day of Older Persons, it is a day to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of seniors. Seniors are a significant and diverse demographic, 1 in 4 Canadians. And whereas Seniors for Climate Change is a nationwide mobilization calling for urgent action to address climate change and support a livable future for our children and grandchildren. And whereas climate change is already affecting our health and ability to produce enough food for all to live in food security, and whereas we face climate changes in Richmond County, such as coastal erosion, increased winds, greater fluctuations in temperature, and severer storms, and whereas we need faster and better action by all levels of government to work towards a just transition to renewable energy, and whereas we need climate action that is broad-based, that supports seniors, youth, Indigenous peoples, blended families, and other disadvantaged and equity-seeking populations, we all need to work together to preserve the planet we love and depend on. And whereas the County of Richmond recognizes the importance of widespread support of Seniors for Climate goals, and whereas the Seniors Take Action Coalition of Richmond County, Dr. Kingston Memorial Community Health Centre, and Richmond River Roots Market Garden support more local action regarding climate change to ameliorate its adverse effects on our overall health and food security. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Warden Amanda Mumbercat, on behalf of the Municipality of the County of Richmond Council, hereby proclaim October 1st, 2024 as Seniors Climate Day in the County of Richmond. Okay, so thanks to both of the groups who put those proclamations forward and to Council for your support on those. So at this stage, I will open it to our final question period of the evening. This will be restricted to the remainder of the agenda following the committee reports. If you're watching at home, you can phone in at 902-226-9885. Or folks in the gallery, if you have questions, you can come up to the table, let us know who you are, and proceed with your question. So we'll just give that a minute. I don't hear the phone ringing, so we're going to jump right to you. So you go ahead, Jermaine, and...
Phone ring?
Nope, it
Oh.
hasn't rung, so you're on. Just let us know your name, although we know your name.
Okay, well, my name is Jermaine McDonald, and I'm from St. Peter's. And I just have a couple of questions. I might have missed something here in the agenda, but when you're talking about the first reading for the amendments to the West Richmond, Central, St. Peter's, whatnot, is that for the variance changes that came across tonight? Yes. Okay. And so what about the subdivision bylaw? Because I noticed, did I totally miss that one? Because I noticed it was on your, the Planning and Advisory Heritage Amendments to the Richmond County Subdivision Bylaw, but I don't recall it being read out. Was that on there tonight?
So I didn't read through the whole report. Is that what you're
asking? No.
Yeah, you put that motion forward. Subdivision.
The subdivision one was put forward?
Yeah, it was part of that committee.
Okay, I'll have to go back and listen. So, given that
The final one, the final one was the committee discussed a bylaw to amend the Richmond County subdivision bylaw for the municipality of the County of Richmond. I move that the Planning Advisory / Heritage Committee recommend to Council to accept the amendments to the Richmond County subdivision bylaw for the municipality of the County of Richmond as presented. That was the one there.
Okay, given that the committee meetings aren't recorded, is there any way that you guys could give maybe the logic around the acceptance of the recommendation that is going to be passed? I understand that the change for variances is that you're going to extend the receipt time to 21 days. So given that Council has been provided information that we know at least one organization or municipal government actually that didn't receive 2 letters, and it's like 700 and some days now, probably. So I'm not sure what the logic is around extending regular mail to 21 days when there's the possibility that you're not going to receive it at all.
Okay, so I'll start off, and then if other councillors would like to chime in, feel free. So we did extend it to the 21 days, thinking, we'll give more people more time for the regular mail situation, because the alternative that we had been investigating was registered mail, and that's what, I know we had spoke about in the past. Information was provided to us by EDPC after doing some investigation into the effectiveness of registered mail that, really kind of shed some doubt on how effective that would be. I know we do not have a consensus of opinion around the table on that, but the majority ruled that if we're going to stick with regular mail, we'll increase the time to 21 days, even though across the province the trend has been to try to shorten that time frame, but recognizing that we're in a rural area, and it may take people a little bit of extra time. So that's the direction that Council decided to go in and avoid the registered mail situation. We did have a discussion also at the Council, or I guess the committee table, as I'm recalling, that sometimes registered mail can actually inhibit, participation because people often do not work or cannot easily access post offices during regular business hours because they work out of their communities, et cetera, or they, spend longer periods of time out of their communities, et cetera. So that was the direction that Council decided to take. It's, I'm sure, not a perfect solution, but I don't know if anybody else would like to chime in on that. And to the point of, hearing from, that the village of St. Peter's hadn't received notice. I mean, I think we would consider that a strange anomaly. Certainly I would. And I think that was just the decision that we arrived at. So I don't know. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that?
And that was with EDPC saying that they used a US-based information on why we shouldn't be using registered mail.
Well, the examples they investigated were from US. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they did their research, they just struggled to find research that showed what the uptick in people actually receiving registered mail. I think it maybe is more of a function of Canada Post not giving out that kind of information, but the reality is that it, and again, we had to go by that. I agree, that's not necessarily our best option, but when it's the only option of research, it was that people did not pick up registered mail, and that there was actually less likelihood that people would go to pick it up if it was registered versus regular. And then the bigger issue, I think, for us at the table as well, because you and I have spoken about it many times, and I think we should make every effort for people to receive it as well, but can we hinder development because somebody doesn't pick it up? Because then what happens if they don't pick up that registered mail? Now we know they didn't pick it up, and so now what's the next part? And I think it was the next part that really set me to rethink what I was originally thinking, which was that registered mail made sense. But I guess I was thinking if I got a registered letter, I'd go pick it up. But apparently I don't think that's as common. So I just wanted to sort of add that it did provide some context to me in terms of, and gave me a pause to say, what would we do if a person didn't pick that letter up? And we had to, what would be the next step? Like knock on their door? Like, what would that look like? So that was where my concern sat. I don't think it's perfect by any stretch. I think part of like talking about using email and things were to try to make things a bit easier, but I agree it's not a perfect solution.
I agree with you there. It's not the perfect solution, but I think with the recommendation for registered mail was more for not only the protection, given the added protection to the person who was supposed to receive it, because you're more probably the chance of it being lost in the mail is a lot less when it's registered mail. And if you don't pick it up, that's your choice personally, how you pick up your mail, but at least the municipality would have been covering all the bases and have their proof if somebody comes to the table and says, well, I didn't get a chance to appeal, and to be told at that point, we sent it out. I can't prove that I sent it, but, I would have sent it. So okay, that's, I wanted to just clarify that one.
Just to kind of maybe address that piece, I mean, the expectation is that people are checking their mails. We've just given them a little bit of extra time to do that. And if they're checking their mail, then they will receive the information, right? So that was part of our thought. So the expectation is that whether it's registered mail or regular mail, people are going to pick up their mail, right? So that was part of it.
But if you choose not to, like I said, you at least, the post office sends that letter back to EDPC and tells them that it wasn't picked up. As well, if it was the wrong address, if there was, if unfortunately you didn't change your records, your registered letter would probably go back to EDPC within maybe 5 or 6 days versus, waiting for regular mail to never show up. But, and when it comes to the survey on the subdivisions, so could you just maybe give some logic around that? Why given that the MGA, or sorry, not the MGA, but the provincial subdivision regulations from back in 1998 had a specific section that talked about what easements were, private roads, that type of thing. They had their wording since 1998. In 1999, the Municipality of Richmond added something that would be a little more stringent. And so I'm surprised that here we are in 2024 and our council is taking out that stringent part, and just to be in line with the province that you haven't been in line with since 1998. So I'm just trying to get my head around why that would happen, because by making the change that you did, you've just reduced the protection of landowners who have get to their properties by right-of-way.
So again, I'll start off and then folks can chime in. So we would, I guess, from my perspective, based on the results of the vote, we would have a different opinion that we've reduced any protections, and that the wording and, aligning with the provincial legislation covers us there, and does protect the landowner. So that's where the committee landed. I don't know if anybody has anything they would like to add to that. But we did feel that aligning with the provincial legislation would provide the most consistency. So
Could you expand on the protection? Because the bylaws, as they are today, your Richmond County bylaws, it says that if you want to subdivide off of a right-of-way, that right-of-way has to be surveyed. And so to me, that's the stringent part. So I think some people were fixated on the name or the word clearly, where the operative should have been surveyed. So I'm not sure by having it surveyed out of the bylaws, how that is providing the protection for the landowner.
So how it was, CAO.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just with this line of question, I'd be more comfortable if we fielded these at the public hearing with our planner in the room.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we can do that.
If we're going to get into the actual those parts of the plans and bylaw, I would feel a lot better if our planner was in the room to answer them on behalf of council, and council can back that up with why they chose to vote the way they did.
Exactly.
Have our planner in to speak to these.
Yeah, no, that sounds good, Troy. I mean, what I would just add is that from my recollection from the discussion, is that it came down to the definitions in some of those provincial language as well. But I think we will have a public hearing. We'll get that scheduled and really dig into those issues. Oh, for sure, there'll definitely be a public hearing for both of the amendments, or I guess however many of the amendments we did this evening. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay. Hearing none. Yes.
Chair, if I could beg one indulgence.
Sure.
This is our last regular meeting scheduled. I just very much want to say how much it's unfortunate I'm not in the room with you, but it's been an honor and to serve at the pleasure of all five of you. And I wish you guys all the best. So
thank you.
We'll see what happens. But thank you, and I'm sorry I couldn't be in the room with you in person.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Troy. You're out there doing the good work, so we appreciate where you're at right now. And I also want to say a special thank you to Councillor Melanie Sampson. She has decided not to reoffer this term, and I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure sitting around the table with you. You've brought an excellent perspective and attention to detail to these proceedings that I think we all benefited from. So, and I know that the municipality and the residents here benefited from. So thank you very much. Did you want to say anything? The last goodbye.
The final hurrah. No, I just wanted to say that it has definitely been my pleasure to serve the county and the residents of District 3. I just felt that lots of other commitments in my life it didn't make it possible for me to do the job that I felt that they deserved, and so that's not my style. I'd prefer to walk away and give others the opportunity to perhaps do that work. I'll be watching from the sidelines, I promise, not to critique, but to cheer you on. I think there's some really wonderful things coming for our county, and I wish all of you the best of luck, whatever happens come Election Day. So it's been a pleasure working with each of you and also with the staff. So thanks to all.
All right, thank you, Councillor. And just, I guess, also want to say that this council has really worked well together as a team. And I hope that future councils will certainly take that to heart as well. Councillor Brent Sampson.
Well, I guess I'll take this opportunity now. I'm not usually the one to be. No, I do not. I apologize. That didn't even cross my mind. However, take this opportunity. I'm not the one to get sappy usually, but really appreciated my time as your seatmate here. And 4 years ago at this point in time, we'd never met. So anyway, my life is richer for having known you these past 4 years. So thank you for all the help along the way.
Well said. All right. Are there any other final comments? I'm going to just allow the floor to happen here because,
Yep. Yep, and yeah, I'm gonna try not to get too emotional as well, Melanie. But as Councillor Sampson said, 4 years ago, we walked into this room, 5 brand new councillors, and looking at each other and saying to ourselves, "What did we get ourselves into?" 5 of us, right? But it's been a fun ride, a learning experience, and I wouldn't change a thing. And it's been a pleasure, Melanie, working with you. You've been an asset to Richmond County over the past 4 years, and everybody around this table has been an asset to our county. And I just want to thank you all for your work ethic and the respect you've shown everybody around this table and the respect you've shown the residents of Richmond County. So thank you to all of you, and all the best.
well, Councillor Digdon,
I'm not usually one to be left out, and you make it very difficult when I'm the last one to follow you 3 or you 4 speaking. But it definitely has been an honor and a privilege, and I think District 3 can't be any better represented than they already were. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. When you become a councillor, people don't realize the commitment that you put in, and I have to say you definitely went above and beyond. So, one of my favorite sayings, because I usually run later than everybody else coming through the door, is all rise, which makes Melanie's hair curl at the back of her head. But in this case, I am going to rise and give her So great job, and thank you very much.
very much, everyone. And I think we're at the end of our meeting agenda. And well, there being no further business, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and say goodnight to our viewers at home. Thank you very much.